Welcome back to Crawlspace. I'm Tim here today, as always, with Lance in the Crawlspace studios in Wormtown. Sup, Lance?
What's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great today. We had a really wonderful conversation with one of our favorite guests, Mike Morford.
The Steve Martin of Crawlspace.
As you'll hear about in just a moment, yeah. And today we talk mostly about his podcast called Criminology. They just released season 3, and it focuses on Ted Bundy. Everyone knows about the serial killer Ted Bundy. Has to be one of the worst human beings in the history of the world, right?
Yeah, we covered a lot with just this conversation, and his season that covers Ted Bundy. He really does a great job of getting all of the facts in there, everything that's sort of important to know about Ted Bundy in 4 episodes.
Yeah. It's pretty breezy, and it's but also very detailed. So congrats to Mike Morford and Mike Ferguson on their spectacular Criminology Season 3.
Because Ted Bundy is not an easy topic to, no pun intended, bite your teeth into.
Well, you could probably do 100 episodes on him, or if you did 1 or 2, you just miss a ton, So they do really detailed accounts and great episodes. So definitely highly recommend Criminology, the podcast. Okay, so check us out on Twitter at CrawlspacePod. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well. And also check us out on the podcast Missing Maura Murray. We are about to release our documentary called Finding Maura Murray on Amazon VOD on October 1st, 2018.
October 1st, 2018 on Amazon, episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is our trip to Canada with James Renner, our introduction into the more hands-on work that goes into the Maura Murray case.
And if you want to hear a candid interview with Lance and I, check out Mike Morford's other podcast, or one of his other podcasts, I should say, called Crime Sphere, and he interviewed us in episode 7. And there will be a link to that in the show notes. Thank you very much. Enjoy this conversation. Welcome to Crawlspace. Mike Morford. How are you today, Mike?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Doing pretty well. Thanks for coming on. You're always a great guest, and we always have really good conversations with you, so we appreciate it.
Well, anytime. I'm always happy to talk to you guys.
Yeah, you are one of our favorite guests, and I think this is your 5th appearance on Crawlspace. I was trying to count them yesterday in my head, and if you count the brief one, the day the Golden State Killer was caught, your brief appearance then on a live show that made the podcast, and then a quick interview from CrimeCon. I think we're at 5 right now.
Whoa, do I win anything?
No, but you're the leader in the clubhouse.
I was hoping I could win one of those Crawlspace mugs.
Oh, no, those are
custom designed, but you can go on our Zazzle store and use a promo code, and you can get a one Crawlspace mug for yourself.
A 2-tone one.
2-tone. You know what? We'll just ship one right to you.
Let's just send one right to you, Mike.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're on the Crawlspace airwaves 5 times.
Yeah,
you get a mug.
It's like SNL. Like you get the robe, like the 5-timers.
Mike, you are the Steve Martin of Crawlspace.
That's right.
Hey, anytime I can come on and talk some shop with you guys, I'm happy to do it.
And it's mostly because the subject matter you cover is just so hilarious, and just kidding, obviously.
You play a mean banjo.
But no, let's talk about your work in the field of true crime, and you are sort of known as True Crime Guy. You have that blog, but you also have this great podcast called Criminology, and your season 3 just wrapped up, right?
Yeah, season 3 was all about the crimes and mind of Ted Bundy.
What a topic to take on.
It was something, in the true crime genre, if you want to do true crime, you have to have some kind of background talking about Ted Bundy. And, I knew a little bit about Ted Bundy, but I was no expert by any stretch. And we enlisted the help of an online friend of ours named EJ Hammond, and she is a Bundy expert, and she helped walk us through to make season 3 happen.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. Now, I think you mentioned that you met her at CrimeCon. Is that correct?
Yeah, we met in person. We were actually friends on Twitter and Facebook and stuff before that, but we met in person at CrimeCon, and we started talking, and, I had known she was a Ted Bundy expert, and we talked a little bit about doing it, but I was burnt out from season 2 with the Golden State Killer. I literally was just not in the mood to even think about another season at that point. I wanted to take a month off and just de-stress.
Yeah.
And, in talking with her, she says, look, I'll help you, create it and take a little bit of the pressure off you. And, she was very helpful in that. And we said, sure, we'd love to have the help. And, it was an interesting project working together with her, and she knows a lot about the case, and it really helped us out, and it, filled a gap when we needed to put some material out. We didn't want to put something out that's just 4 episodes of schlock. So we wanted it to be good, and she helped us put something out that we thought was pretty good.
Yeah, and this is definitely not schlock. It's wonderfully detailed and just very informative.
Well, thank you.
Did you ever have any doubts when you were thinking about doing Ted Bundy? Because that is, you look at anything online and it's so dense. There's so much information.
Also, your other 2 seasons were unsolved, and this one is a different kind of case, right?
Yeah, we wanted to mix it up a little bit. The first 2 were serial killers. Ted Bundy's a serial killer, and we didn't, it's not like we intended to become a podcast about serial killers. I think, as we're going along, we'll dive into some different stuff. But we said, we want to do Ted Bundy, that's solved. Let's switch it up a little bit. So it was a little bit different doing a solved case because there's less questions. We have some of the backstory for that.
And before we get a little deeper into Bundy, just wanted to mention you have a couple new podcasts, one called Crime Sphere and one called The Murder in My Family. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so Crime Sphere is a weekly or bi-weekly, depending on our schedule, podcast that I co-host with Nina Instead, who is already gone. And we talk about what's new in the world of true crime and the news that's breaking and developing. And we also talk about what's new in media as far as TV shows, books, documentaries, that kind of stuff. And that's what we do for that. And then The Murder in My Family is a solo project that I've been thinking about starting for a long time, and I finally got around to doing it. And that's where I discuss different murder cases and talk to family members of the victims to help me tell the story and get an idea of what it was like trying to get justice for their family members.
Well, that's a light fare. That's probably nothing that sticks in your psyche as you go through your day.
Yeah, you leave it at the door.
It's tough. It's hard not to take a little piece of each story with you that you cover and not, it's there. You can't just shake it off and say, okay, I'll move on. And that was one episode. Now I go to another one. You take a little piece of that story with you. And it's kind of negative in the fact that it's always dealing with something so painful, but having the platform to help these people tell their stories and talk about these cases is something that I think is positive and something good comes out of it. So that's what I try and focus on.
I imagine that's quite therapeutic for these family members.
I'd like to think so. I know a couple of them had said that, and I've so far it's been all positive. I haven't had any negative reviews from family members. I've had a lot of people thank me and say they really appreciate it, and that's what I'm hoping to do, is provide a platform that's positive and is a good thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great idea for a podcast, and we commend you for doing that. Can't tell you how many emails we've received over the past 3 years in doing what we do with Missing Maura and Crawlspace from family members who ask for coverage. We couldn't get to them all, so your idea, this premise for this show, I think is the perfect place for people who want to talk about their friends or loved ones who were murdered.
Yeah, and I think so too. And unfortunately, the sad thing is there's no shortage of cases. There's just, like you mentioned, there's a whole endless list of them, and new ones are always happening. So it's, from a podcast standpoint, you want to have stuff to talk about. But the flip side of the coin is that it's all these people being murdered to talk about. And I wish that would come to an end and there'd be nothing left to talk about and there'd be no more murders. But obviously that's not the real world. So as long as it's something that's worth talking about, I'd like to keep talking about it.
Yeah, if you're able to have a platform and have a voice and provide some sort of comfort, then, you're on the right path.
Yeah, I agree. It's a rewarding part of doing what we do, I guess.
And so now you had books that you wrote for season 1 and season 2 of Criminology, that being the Zodiac Case and the Golden State Killer, and those are available on Wild Blue Press. Are you planning a book for this season about Ted Bundy?
As of right now, we're just trying to get caught up and focused on the first two books. Season 1 about the Zodiac Killer, we turned into a book, and it's strictly a transcript of the podcast. So it's a written format of what we did on the podcast. And then season 2, for that book, we wanted to switch it up a little bit and make it a little bit more book-like. So that's what we did with that. So I think right now we're just playing catch up, trying to see where we are with those two books and go from there. But we want to focus on those two and seeing what people's response is to those books.
Hey, Lance, what's not smart?
I think tops on that would be letting my friends pick a karaoke song for me to sing.
That's good. Yeah, that's definitely not a smart choice. But do you know what is smart, Lance?
Hold on, let me get my other list of things that I think are smart.
Right on the top of it, it's going to say going to ZipRecruiter.com/crawlspace to hire the right person. Am I right?
It's right on the top of my list.
I knew it.
And it's not even because I do things in reverse alphabetical order.
ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Boom.
Its powerful matching technology scans thousands of resumes, identifies people with the right skills, education, and experience for your job, and actively invites them to apply. So you get qualified candidates. F-A-S-T.
First?
Fast.
Oh, so that's why ZipRecruiter is rated number 1 by employers in the U.S. This rating comes from hiring sites on Trustpilot with over 1,000 reviews.
So we have something good for people who listen to Crawlspace who are hiring.
Oh my. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free.
What?
Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/crawlspace.
That's ZipRecruiter.com/crawlspace.
CRAWLSPACE. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, so let's get into Ted Bundy. One of the most interesting things that I find always about Ted Bundy is that he escapes from prison.
Yeah, he escaped from prison multiple times, and he's a resilient and smart and I guess shifty kind of guy that was able to get away from custody more than once.
Okay, you said smart, and that was one of my questions that I wanted to ask you. Do you think that he was brilliant? Do you think he could have been labeled, or was he labeled as a genius?
I don't know that he was a genius. I think there's been a little bit of discussion about that. I think he definitely was smart. I mean, he went to college. He was college educated. He was involved in politics. So I think he moved in circles of people that were in that kind of niche that he'd have that intelligence, that he'd have higher learning in college and stuff like that. So I think he had at least an average IQ or better, and he was smart enough to go into college and practice to become an attorney. And unfortunately, that sort of took a back seat to what he started doing, and he never really put that to use. But, had he put that motivation, that drive, that passion that he had for killing into whatever he wanted to become as a person, he could have, maybe done great things.
Yeah, what do you make of the judge's comments during his trial when he was sentenced?
Yeah, that was, we talk about that a little bit in one of the episodes. That was pretty memorable. If I remember watching that when I was younger and seeing that and saying, wow, here's a guy that's this massive serial killer that's done all these grotesque things and ended so many lives, and he's getting like the praise of the judge in the case. Not praise necessarily, but he pointed out the fact that he could have done good things, and he chose to go another direction. And I think that's an interesting dichotomy, that somebody can be two different sides of the same coin.
So Bundy confessed to 30 homicides in 7 states between 1974 and 1978. But what do you think the actual victim count is?
We discussed that a little bit in the episodes too. I would tend to think it's in that range, maybe slightly higher, maybe some that he didn't bring attention to, or maybe even forgot. I don't know how good he was at keeping track of that stuff, but there's been claims that there was 100 potential victims. I think that's just really high because if you think about the time, the energy, the luck to get away with that many murders that many times, I just don't think that's possible. But if it was 30, 40, I could see that being probably the likely number.
So how would this guy approach his victims?
He didn't look like the monster, the troll under the bridge, number one. He was a good-looking guy. He didn't look out of place. He looked like somebody that you would trust, but he would also take it a step further, and he'd usually have an injury. He'd have a cast on, and he'd ask some of these female victims to help load his books in his car and things like that. And then he would attack these women while they were helping him out. And other times he would pose as a police officer, telling women that they needed to come with him because there was something wrong and that he needed to take a report. So I think having that look and that charm that he had put these women at ease. Whereas if some of these scary killers that we've seen, they're scary looking, they look like serial killers. I think if they approached these women, they would have been a little bit more on guard. But I think he helped get their guard down a little bit using some of these natural things that he had.
Fun piece of trivia, Thomas Harris, who wrote Silence of the Lambs, based the Buffalo Bill character or several characteristics about Buffalo Bill from Ted Bundy, the cast and getting help loading something into the vehicle. So his techniques did resonate outside of just the psychology and the criminal community.
Thomas Harris must have considered Bundy an inspiration for Hannibal Lecter as well, though, because that was the role he played in trying to help the feds catch the Green River Killer.
Yeah, and he did offer to help them out, and he had some things right. I think that he predicted that the killer would go back and visit his victims after their death, and he was right about that. There were certain things that he definitely hit on the head. I don't know how much of an effort they made to enlist him in helping them, but they did listen to some of the stuff he had to say in the Green River case.
Do you think that Ted Bundy would have been as successful as a serial killer if he wasn't handsome?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because I really think that first glimpse of when these women saw him, if you've got Ted Bundy coming towards you in a dark alley, or you've got Otis Toole coming towards you in a dark alley, if you've ever seen a picture of that guy, you're going to right away be on guard if he's coming towards you versus, oh, this guy doesn't look, like he's a risk, so I'm going to let my guard down. I think that first initial second or two where people made that first impression of him helped him just let their guard down a little bit. And I think he easily could have had a lot less victims if he wasn't charming and handsome and didn't present that first appearance.
Okay, now we talked real quickly about him having escaped from prison twice. But can you tell us about the time where he lost 30 pounds in order to escape?
Yeah, so he had been losing weight in prison to try and squeeze through, I think it was a crawl space.
Yes.
Actually, that he was trying to get through.
Thanks for the plug.
Crawlspace. But he got out that way and made his way out. And I think some of the prisoners actually tried to tell the guards that he was trying to escape, and they didn't listen. And by the time they realized he was gone, he had gotten a head start on him. And he didn't look like, any of the pictures I've seen, he never looked like a heavy guy to begin with. So him losing 30 pounds, he must have really worked and been determined to get out, because I can imagine how thin he must have been after he lost that 30 pounds.
I don't know if people really understand the true horror of Ted Bundy, especially the younger people that are just getting into true crime. Can you speak of just a couple of things that brings that true horror of this man into light?
Well, I think I should preface it by saying that, this is a different era. This is when people hitchhiked. I think some of the younger people out there listening are like, hitchhiking, what's that? It's just something that it just doesn't happen anymore. But back then, you would put your thumb out and somebody would drive by and pull over and pick you up, and you would trust them that they're going to give you a ride to wherever it is you're trying to go. And back in the 60s and 70s, I can only imagine these serial killers patrolling the highways must have just had a field day with these potential victims that were willing to jump in their car. But beyond that, he would do all kinds of terrible things to these women. He would mutilate them, remove their heads. He would have sex with their corpses. He would do it repeatedly. He would go home and come back the next day and then do it again. And, he was big time in necrophilia, and he would continue to do this as long as the bodies would be, not too far gone to do that with. And then once they were finally decomposed enough that he couldn't do it, then he stopped. But I think that's the most repulsive and gory detail about what he did and how many times he did that, because he did that a lot of times.
Now, he defended himself in court during one of these trials, correct?
Yes.
And he made the decision not to plead insanity. Was that the same trial, or was that a different trial?
So I forget the exact details of why what his point was that he was trying to make, but he didn't really own up. He wouldn't own up to being responsible, and his mental illness, I think, showed through when he defiantly said, "I'm going to represent myself." It's just that part of his personality that came through, and he chose to represent himself. And he even wanted to question, some of these potential female victims and witnesses, so he could have a chance to talk to them and force them to talk to him. We had on a guy named Ron Eng on the show, and he worked at the sorority house where the Bundy attacked a bunch of the girls there in Florida. And he became a brief suspect early on. And in court, he was forced to go in there and stand, side to side and back to back with Ted Bundy to do a physical comparison. And that was something that, Bundy seemed to enjoy, getting him to pull those strings and get him in there to display in front of the jury. So I think he got it off a little bit on the whole representing himself and thumbing his nose at the legal process.
Sort of the attention it gave him.
I think he craved that. And I think, he denied for a long time that he did this stuff. It was, he always had an excuse. And it wasn't until he knew he was going to die and there was no saving himself that he finally said, "This is, I admitted I did this stuff." But that was something that his personality wouldn't let him admit that. And that's one of the interesting things about him is you almost wonder if he really believed it on some level that he didn't do it, or he just continued that lie until it was impossible to continue the lie anymore.
Now, you're talking about the interview that he did with, is he a doctor? Dr. James Dobson. He's a psychologist.
I think he was a religious doctor of some sort. He had a degree, something. But yeah, he did that shortly before his execution. And he opened up, and, we had a couple snippets in the season of some of that interview. And it's really bizarre because he's at points, Ted Bundy's talking about himself in the third person. Sometimes he's whispering to the doctor because he doesn't want other people to overhear what he's saying. And it's pretty bizarre, but he finally admits to some of the stuff that he did. But there were some victims, especially the young ones. I don't know if the remorse is the right word, or maybe he felt that even attacking some of the young girls that he had killed was just even further below what he would expect as decent. It's hard to explain, but some of the young victims he definitely didn't want to admit to killing. And I think it's because he realized that was the lowest of low. And, maybe to admit that would admit how much of a monster he actually was.
Right. Do you think that this is him being remorseful of being that much of a monster? Or do you think it's him not wanting that? Because there's a certain level of monster that he wanted to be, and he wanted to die with that image in people's heads. So do you think that it wasn't true remorse for on a human level, but more like, hey, I'm already the king of serial killers. I don't want to be associated with being, a child murderer too, because that sort of diminishes the crown.
I sort of wrestled with that. I can't put my finger on it. If, he was raised by a religious family, I sometimes wonder if he felt he was letting them down, and to admit that he had done this to children would be too far to over the line, even for somebody in his family to accept, because his mother defended him right up until the end. And I guess she was just in denial. But I think maybe he just didn't want to hurt her. But you have to wonder, because these guys usually don't have empathy. They don't care about anybody but themselves. They don't care about anybody else's feelings. So it makes me wonder if there really was any empathy, if he was just embarrassed that he had killed girls that small. Yeah, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, because he says at one point that he does feel guilt, but it didn't really ring true, I don't think. And there was one point in that interview where he declines talking about the 12-year-old girl that he murdered. It was too tough for him, is what he said, which is really frustrating.
It's frustrating that he wouldn't own up to it. But again, the reasons for him not wanting to talk about it, it's just, I wrestle with my own beliefs of why that is. And, if we go by serial killer code, these guys just don't have any feelings. They don't care. They don't care what you think, what I think, what their family thinks. They don't care about anybody but themselves. But I just, something nags at me that something made him, again, remorseful is probably not the right word, but embarrassed. I don't know what the right word is, but something about those crimes, I think he didn't want to stoop to that level of being that much of a monster.
You said something a minute ago about his mother defending him right up until the end, and she was in some sort of denial. He also was raised in a Christian environment. Do you think that denial is a result of being a devout Christian?
Yeah, I think it may be. I think he had this image that he had made. I'm a Republican. I'm this clean-cut college guy. I'm going to be an attorney. I think part of it was just wanting to protect that image. And I think he thought he could get by with that image and somehow make people believe that that's who he was. And I think some of the denial stems from, for me to admit this goes against everything that I built in this image. So I think he held on to that and just until he just couldn't deny it anymore, until it was clear that he was guilty and there was no getting out of it.
During those interviews before he's executed, he's talking about porn as being one of the reasons he killed, or sort of one of the effects of watching porn is, I suppose, what he became. So he kind of blames it, without exactly saying I blame it, on porn, and even sort of brought horror movies into it. How do you feel about that?
I think he was using that as an excuse. I would bet he doesn't know why he did what he did. It was an urge that he couldn't control, and maybe the urges kept building up until he did it, and he couldn't stop it. I think a lot of these guys can't fight these urges that they get, and they probably don't even know why they're getting them and why they can't stop. If you look at somebody like the Golden State Killer, same thing. One thing led to breaking in, and then it was breaking in when people were home, and then finally it was taking somebody from their home, and then and then it led to rapes, and then the murders. It spiraled and kept going deeper and deeper. And I'd be willing to bet that, like Ted Bundy, the Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo, probably couldn't tell you why he did what he did, but obviously those urges were there. I think that's a fascinating thing to consider, is these people that do this kind of stuff, can they stop, and do they ever ask themselves, why can't I stop? And I think the same is probably true of Ted Bundy. I just don't think he knew what he was driving him, but he used that porn as an excuse. And again, I'm sure somebody with sexual urges and desires could possibly be fueled by porn. It's probably safe to say. But then again, how many guys out there watch porn at some point and they're not serial killers?
Well, that's what I was going to say. By his logic, there should be more serial killers today than there were then, because there's more porn today and there's more horror movies today.
Yeah, and I think it's just a baseless claim for him. Maybe it didn't help his situation, but just seeing some porn didn't cause him to become a serial killer. There's obviously a lot more going on than that.
So, Lance, I'm really into this new entertainment experience.
Whoa, it's a PG show here, Tim. What are we...
No. This is called Empty Faces. It's this interactive game, and you become a character inside their story, and you try to stop an unspeakable evil. Just kind of like you're a detective, or more like a paranormal investigator.
It sounds like it's very interactive. Am I catching your drift on that?
Yeah, you've caught my drift, and man, is it detailed. It actually feels real.
Is it a monthly subscription?
It is. So each month, more clues, items, and correspondence are delivered to you, which build up to a thrilling conclusion. A lot like a TV show that you can touch.
We should get together with some friends and we can do an Empty Faces game night.
You could do that if we wanted to hang out outside of work. Or you could join their online community to swap theories and ideas with people just like me and you, Lance.
Maybe I'll try it on my own.
You've got to try this. It's a really cool feature. They also have online resources to help you keep on track or give you hints.
It sounds like it's not for the faint of heart. It sounds scary and even creepy.
But it's a lot of fun, and more people are joining every day, so get in early.
Ooh, do they have like a minimum or a maximum acceptance?
It's very exclusive, Lance. They only accept 200 new members a day, so go to their website now and apply for membership. emptyfaces.com.
And do I get like a percentage off here?
Yeah, you do. You get 10% off your first box when you use the code CRAWL. So again, go to emptyfaces.com, use the code CRAWL.
I don't know if I can stop the evil.
Can you stop the evil, Lance? You got to stop it. You just got to try.
And again, that code is CRAWL, CRAWL.
I'm just going to wait while you go to emptyfaces.com right now and type in promo code CRAWL.
Fascinating quote by him. He says, "We serial killers are your sons, we are your husbands, we are everywhere, and there will be more of your children dead tomorrow," which is a crazy, remorseless thing to say. I think that speaks a lot to like I said before, the crown that he wanted to wear. He wanted to kill, he liked killing, and he didn't feel guilt. He actually said that he felt sorry for people who felt guilt. I think he liked being what he was. What do you think about that?
I think so too. I think, he said at times that he wanted a normal life, and I think, again, the urges probably took over and that derailed that from happening. But he definitely talked about some of those things to where I think he was being truthful, even though it's a hard truth, and it may have been remorseless, but the fact that he was admitting that there are serial killers out there, there are people like me that do this thing, and there's going to be more victims because I'm not the only one. He was right about that. Who knows how many different serial killers have been operating in the 60s, 70s, 80s, up until they finally started understanding serial killers and searching for them and looking for traits to identify them. But, I think he hit the nail on his head. They are, they're your sons or your fathers, they're your brothers, and sometimes women, sometimes they're sisters and daughters and stuff too, but primarily it's men. But he sort of accepted that he was part of a certain kind of people, and I think that's something that, whether it was no remorse or what on his part, he was right about that.
I think one of the most terrifying things about him is how people have claimed to have experienced him physically changing when they're in his presence. Not like a true metamorphosis, but his facial expressions would change, his eyes would change, and some people even said that he admitted an odor, which is really, really interesting and terrifying. And that made me think about something else that he said, which was when he got the urge to perform necrophilia and to murder, it was like a tidal wave of a chemical that would hit his brain, and it would send him into a frenzy. And if you put those two things together, like this chemical hitting your brain, and then you physically change, so much so that someone can look at you and say, that doesn't look like the person that was here a second ago, and then an odor coming off the person. I don't want to say he's like the perfect manifestation of evil, because I don't really believe in evil in like the religious sense, but could that be as close to evil as you can get?
I'd say so.
Yeah, and if you get into the science of it, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but it makes me wonder if he did have, some kind of physical, abnormalities in his brain that, perhaps was detected by people. We hear about people that are getting ready to have seizures. Dogs can sniff that out. So maybe there is something to that, where chemicals in his body some people could sense that. And that's something that we touch on a little bit in the episodes. And we actually talked to an author he works with brains and was very interested in Ted Bundy's brain. And, he touched on it from that angle of exploring the physical causes. I think that's an interesting thing that maybe should be checked out further, not just with Bundy, but with other serial killers, to see if there's some kind of physical changes like that can, alert people. And who knows, years in the future, maybe there'll be dogs that can sniff out this chemical or whatever that say, hey, this person could be dangerous. It'd be interesting to see if studies could be done with some of these criminals to see if there is such a thing.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, there is studies done on people's brains. They do the studies for concussions. Now they're able to identify whether or not you have a concussion without you donating your brain to science after you've died. So a living person can have, they're on their way of discovering that, or at least looking into it. But there have been there are abnormalities in a serial killer's brain, as opposed to my brain or your brain or Einstein's brain
or Dr. Morford
Morford's brain.
Dr. Morford, now the Golden State Killer, Joe D'Angelo, there were accounts of him sort of emitting this odor too, but now that was more like a Crisco that he put on himself, or some kind of lubrication that he put on himself. Am I right about that?
Yeah, there were times when he, a lot of times people would say he smelled like sweat. Then other times they would say he smelled like aftershave. And then other times it was this smell that I can't describe. And I think one time it was cinnamon. And I don't know if any of that was chemicals necessarily, but I think he definitely had dog repellent that he sprayed on himself to try and throw these dogs off. So who knows, that could have been causing some of the odd descriptions that people were giving.
That's right. I forgot about the dog repellent. Now, are there any other accounts? Do either of you guys know about a serial killer emitting some kind of strange odor for anything else other than Bundy and GSK?
Right. No, not that I've ever read. And even Golden State Killer is more like something he did, or sweat, like a natural smell. I don't think that I've ever read anything about somebody stating that they've been in the room and seen a change and smelled an odor. What about you, Dr. Morford?
Yeah, as far as my medical background goes, I haven't come across that either. Not that I know of. I think there's a lot of common traits specifically about the brain. I think we all agree on that, whether it's people that have hit their heads when they were younger. A lot of serial killers have head injuries. Obviously, when they examine some of these brains, they find that there's certain portions of the brain that are different from a normal person's. But it would be interesting to the chemistry a bit further and explore other changes that can be detected in the body to see if they could be predictors or give any kind of clues as to who might do this stuff and if they're any different that way as well.
Well, sometimes when Tim and I are in the Crawlspace studios, Tim will emit an odor, but it's usually me who wants to kill him at that point, which I don't know if that's got like a contagious effect.
Yeah, I always thought that was you with the odor. That's weird.
Hopefully you guys got a good filter system there and it sucks it right up and takes it out of the crawl space for you.
We don't.
No, it's basically a hyperbolic chamber in here.
I just a brief Google search does suggest that there may be something to what we're talking about as far as a smell and serial killers. At least there are a few articles and there's a decent Reddit thread about it. So I don't know, something to look into. I mean, you never know where crime's going to go when crime and technology, which changes all the time, every day, as we're seeing with DNA, more cold cases than ever are being solved now. You never know where the future of crime plus science will go.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at, where DNA is now versus where it was 5-10 years ago. It's just night and day difference. So, who knows what the future holds, what other tools will be at the disposal of people that are trying to stop these guys and understand them.
Can you tell us how Ted Bundy was captured? I think that's it gives me a dirty feeling when I hear the story about how he was captured. Also, side note, he was a pretty impressive alcoholic too. Not a lot of people realize that he was an alcoholic.
Yeah, we didn't touch on a whole lot of the alcohol aspect, but on your first point, he had been pulled over, obviously after the Florida incident. We're going back to that after he committed the attacks on the women in the sorority down in Florida. He got away, and then he attacked a young girl on her bike not far away. And I think he stole a vehicle, and police, got onto him that way. And when they finally, when he pulled over Bundy, the officer, they got into a confrontation. They got into an altercation, and Ted Bundy didn't go quietly. I mean, I don't know how big the officer was, but he put up a fight and resisted him, and they struggled for the gun, and finally the officer got the upper hand and was able to subdue him. But even at that point, he was denying who he was. But then he's saying little things like, "You should have just let me. I wish you would have killed me." Things like that. So, what does a guy that hasn't done anything wrong say? "I wish you would have just killed me." And why is he resisting arrest like that? Compared to some of the things we see on TV nowadays, it wasn't that big a deal the way he was taken down, but he wasn't going quietly despite his easygoing, laid-back appearance. He put up a fight.
Yeah, I think the part that makes me feel dirty is the
scent in here.
Yeah, the scent in the hyperbolic crawlspace chamber. No, just I don't know. Like, speaking of scent, I can almost smell him. Can't you? Like,
that is the sour milk smell in here.
Oh, okay. But I can't, I couldn't imagine being the police officer that arrested him, and he gets out of the car, and he just must have been like, he just feels dirty to me. He just got off of another attack of a young woman. Ugh.
And again, I'm sure the officer walking up to the car at first, once he knows the vehicle's stolen, obviously he's probably on high alert. But when he sees him, he's probably not. All right, this guy looks like he's a thin college guy. I can easily handle this guy. He doesn't look that threatening. And, obviously that was part of Ted Bundy's MO. And that's how he was able to get the upper hand on him.
Now, he got married after he was incarcerated. Can you tell us about this story?
Yeah, so he used to have a lot of, I guess you would call them groupies, women that would write to him in prison and follow him and go to court. And I think the woman that he actually married, he had a relationship with previously, if I'm not mistaken, and they conceived a child, and nobody knows exactly how they were able to do that.
I have a theory.
Yeah, there's been a couple theories. We discussed them on the podcast, but one of them that was a guard assisted them, for money or what have you. But there's no known way of how the child was conceived. But, apparently she was born and changed her name and went into hiding and doesn't want any part of being Ted Bundy's daughter, which is a whole nother podcast episode in itself of what it's like to be his daughter, probably.
Yeah. Here's my theory. So on the podcast, you guys said, well, maybe this prison guard was kind of bribed, and he let Carol and Ted go behind a vending machine or have some kind of conjugal visit. But that means that however many times that happened, that guard was willing to let Ted do this, that Carol was impregnated once, or like after one or two tries. It doesn't seem likely. What seems more likely is that she was impregnated by someone who wasn't in jail and didn't need to bribe a guard to let a serial killer have sex. Like that seems really unlikely to me.
I don't know. From what I've heard, and I've never seen this girl, but the author Anne Rule, I think, knows who she is. And I've heard from other people, again, I've never seen her, but I've heard she's a spitting image of Ted Bundy. So it'd be interesting to know if she really is, how it came to be, and who knows, maybe she'll come out of the hiding one day and share her story. She didn't do anything wrong. We just did a episode on criminology. We talked to Jen Carson, who's the daughter of a serial killer, and she talked at great lengths about how she too is a victim. Which she is, and you see it in the Golden State Killer case. D'Angelo's daughters, they didn't do anything wrong, and they've got to live with this now. He's ruined their lives, and now they're victims. So, Ted Bundy's daughter, she's out there and decides to come forward. It'll be an interesting story, but she's got to understand that she didn't do anything wrong.
That's definitely true, but before she comes out and writes a book or whatever happens, if she ever comes forward, I would love to see an actual DNA test or something like that, because based on what I've heard, it doesn't really seem that likely to me that it's his kid.
Yeah, I hope somebody would, confirm, before they give a book deal and say, okay, we're just going to take your word for it. We hope somebody would confirm that and make sure that it is indeed his daughter.
Now, Bundy was executed while sitting in Old Sparky down in Florida. So can you tell us a little bit about the execution of Ted Bundy?
Yeah, it was interesting. We had a pretty good recounting of that, and he's 8 feet away from his cell was 8 feet away from the chair, so he had that in his face the whole time. That had to be knowing that chair that you're going to die in is sitting 8 feet away from you. But his last meal, he didn't ask for anything special. It was very uneventful. He got up and they marched him in, and he went limp-legged, and they had to drag him a little ways, and then he composed himself, and then finally manned up and got in the chair. But I think the interesting part wasn't the execution itself. It was the mob scene outside of the prison. It was like a tailgate party out there. People were just cheering as the hearse is driving off with his body. It was you can see I remember the video, and I can still picture it, just this large crowd mobbed outside cheering and whistling like they're outside a football game. It was definitely something I don't remember seeing since then.
Yeah, it's something that brings people together, I suppose.
Football games and dead serial killers.
And the execution of monsters.
Yeah.
And then you have a united front.
Well, yeah, I was going to say about his execution. Like, I don't really want to get into a death penalty debate on these airwaves right now, but this guy really needed to be put to death. There was no prison that could hold him, and he was going to kill people if he wasn't in jail. So, however you feel
Tim,
about,
didn't you hear the interview? He found God.
Oh, you're right. He found God. You know what?
Total remorse. He's just going to stay off the porn.
They should have let him out.
He's not going to watch the Halloween series anymore.
Death penalty wise, again, I agree with you. Probably shouldn't debate that, but I think it's safe to say if there's somebody that deserved the death penalty, that's him. So I think we could probably leave it at that, and everybody can fall on their own sides of the death penalty, either pro or con.
He escaped prison twice before and killed people after escaping prison. So I would say this is the best evidence that if you're a pro death penalty.
I say if you're going to use his brain and scientifically dissect it and make some conclusions that could help society later on, if a person like that is occupying the prisons and taking up taxpayer money, I know that's such a tired argument, but if there is anyone who deserves to be executed, it's someone like him.
Yeah. But the mob scene really was fascinating outside, and you make a good point. Like, that's not something we've seen since, and there's not a ton of like high-profile executions like Ted Bundy's was, but still, that's quite a scene. I was trying to put myself in the shoes of people, and I don't think I would be happy about it. I don't think I would be chanting "na na na na, hey hey hey, goodbye." You know, I don't think I'd be happy at all. I think I'd be disgusted by the entire process. It's just more death, you know, like and again, I support him being put to death, but I don't think I'd be celebrating it.
It's almost like that mob mentality of when people just start getting out of hand and start fueling each other's rage and stuff. And it's scary because then they start becoming a little bit more like the monster that they're screaming and yelling about.
Yeah.
And I think that's a society thing that it's scary to see that there's some parallels between everybody, even serial killers and normal people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see that a lot more going from the physical mob scene to a social media mob scene. People pile on social media all the time. And you said, like, you don't know if you'd feel sad or happy that because it's just perpetuating death, but you definitely wouldn't be going down there. You know, people who are feeling this, you know, passionately about something, now they'll turn to Twitter or Facebook and they'll protest or they'll assemble there as opposed to going to the physical location, which is why I think that left such an impact on, I think, all of us, because we're all in the same age range, and we remember that as being one of the earlier memories of you know, watching TV and seeing something we'd never seen before. These people obviously went down there and they felt passionate about putting somebody who they thought was, you know, pure evil, just getting that person out of the world. I think a lot of those people probably could care less if his brain is examined for scientific purposes.
That's a good point. I do sort of get the relief that these people would have, because even going through your podcast and hearing the part where he's executed, I feel like you feel a sense of relief. It's like, okay, good. I don't have to hear about this guy killing anybody else. I'm glad he's not here anymore.
Yeah.
But it still didn't make me feel like cheering or anything. Maybe because I was alone when listening to it. I don't know. Maybe
because they were there and it affected them. It's in their area where these crimes happen. But still, it's an interesting thing that we just don't see that often. I mean, it's sort of reminiscent of the OJ verdicts. You know, the passion that there were from people when that was announced. You know, versus what would the opposite have looked like if he was found not guilty.
Oh, you know what that looks like?
Well, yeah,
that happened right before the OJ, the LA riots. You saw what happens.
And that feeds into the mob mentality of, you know, so at what point are we finding ourselves being similar to some of these guys that we think are pure evil? There's some kind of wavelength that I think at times lines up to where we could be a little bit like these guys, and that's a little bit scary to me.
Yeah, and I'm probably using the word incorrectly. It felt a bit disingenuous to me to watch those people celebrate his death when he was responsible for so many innocent people dying, and they don't show you pictures of people with like Karen Campbell, one of his victims. No one had a T-shirt with her picture on it and just standing there in silent protest. It's these like rebel rousers with, you know, they spell Friday F-R-Y day, and it's like, you're going to celebrate that? There's more to this incident than, you know, your secondhand gratification of the whole thing.
And even someone like Bundy, who was so familiar with death, having killed at least 30 people approximately, but he was afraid. As you said, he went limp at one point before getting into the chair. The guards had to put him in. And also, you noted that he didn't want to leave his cell at first, too. So this is a guy that was actually afraid to die, and really quite cowardly about it, I would say.
And he even said at one point in the interview, I think, that he said, "I don't want to die." You know, he didn't. I don't think he used the words afraid. I think he said, "I don't want to die," but I think he had almost given up and accepted his fate, which was interesting.
Now, that would not be an easy death, and I certainly think it would be really difficult to stand up and walk towards the guards when they say, "All right, come on, let's go. Your time's up." You know, I don't know that I could do it. But this is a guy who is so closely connected to death. Like, he had to know he had this coming at some point.
And that goes back to those urges. You know, he knew what the outcome would be. He was a smart guy, so he knew what he faced if he got caught for this kind of stuff. And, you know, even knowing that it was wrong and knowing what the results would be, he couldn't stop himself.
But he said himself he was the most cold-hearted son of a bitch out there. You know, he's the most cold-hearted son of a bitch you'll ever meet. And, you know, this guy is the guy who's, you know, needs to be carried to his death. Like you said, he's
a bullshitter.
Yeah, he was a merchant of death. You should at least man up and take your own death. You look what you've just ripped people out of the world.
I would almost think he'd be curious about the experience, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everybody could be a cold-hearted son of a bitch until it comes time to walk towards the electric chair that you're getting ready to get strapped in. And I think that is a real wake-up call.
That must be like such an experience, you know, to look at that thing and walk towards it and know I'm not going to get up after I sit down there. And, you know, they strap you in, they put a mask on you.
And it's going to hurt.
Oh, yeah. And he looks everybody in the crowd in the eye, even smiled, apparently, or at least smirked at the prosecutor. And you, as you say, it hurt. It smelt like burnt flesh a bit. Do we know any? I mean, there's not many accounts of people who have survived the old Sparky. So how do we know like how bad it hurts?
I don't think there is a way to know. I can only assume that many volts of electricity going through you is not going to feel good. I mean, I think, you know, I'm not getting too graphic, but, you know, I think your eyes pop out of your head and all kinds of different things. So, you know, some guys catch on fire and their head smokes and stuff. So, it's probably like, I would imagine it's like being cooked alive. So something that I definitely don't want to experience.
I once, as a child, stuck a key in a electrical socket.
Yeah,
because I'm just an idiot, and that hurt a lot. I mean, that it's experiencing electricity on such a level flowing through your body. Even a key in an electrical socket is painful. You know. They shave your head. They put that thing on your head. It goes into your brain and throughout your body, and they don't stop until you're dead.
And he had burn marks on his head from the device you just mentioned after his death. Actually, there are photos of his body after his death.
Yeah, and he still had that sort of smirk on his face, too.
Yeah, he did. And the burns on his head, yeah, kind of graphic images, but kind of interesting to see the effects of old Sparky.
Yeah, it's, again, being pro or con, death penalty, I don't think there's any arguing with the horrific result of the aftermath.
How frustrating was it for you putting together this season and listening to the interview that he had with Dobson when he, in one breath, would say, listen, I'm not making an excuse for my behavior and my actions, and then in the other breath, it was all about him going down the path and using pornography and all of that. Was that frustrating to hear? Do you think that he was talking out of both sides of his face there?
Yeah, I sort of tend to think that he was. He seemed to be a contradiction at times. You know, he'd say things like, I didn't do this. And then another time he's saying, I'm the most cold-hearted son of a bitch that, you know, ever lived. So, I mean, I think some of it was an act, and then at times maybe little bits of the truth would slip in, or the more not larger than life Ted would come through. So it's interesting to sort of compare the things that he said and did, and try and figure out who the real Ted Bundy was.
And I really like the point you guys make on the podcast that really only his victims saw the actual Ted Bundy, because that was who he wanted to be all the time. And any other person or us who have seen videos of him, pictures and such, we're looking at him with his mask on, essentially.
Absolutely. I mean, who knows what kind of deranged look and you know, things he did during his murders. You know, that's the stuff we'll never know.
Now, there's a new movie that's coming out about Ted Bundy, right?
Yeah, there's one. I forget the name of it, but it's got Zac Efron in it, which is funny because
that's Lance's favorite actor.
Got his poster on the back of my bedroom door.
somebody had sent us something, an email or message, a DM that said, "Is it true that Zac Efron is going to be on your podcast this season?" I don't know where that came from. And I was like, no. And I responded to it. And I made a joke on Twitter that, no, Zac Efron is not coming on our podcast. And like immediately we had these hundreds of retweets of people saying, please, Zac Efron, please come on the podcast. We had this mass of listeners that were, trying to get his attention to get him to come on the podcast to talk about it. But, I'm looking forward to seeing the movie. It looks like it'll be pretty good. And he, from what I've heard, he's doing a pretty good job as Ted Bundy.
Yeah, he looks really authentic as Ted in some of the pictures out from the movie. And the movie is called Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. That's the name of the movie, so it's kind of an interesting title. Yeah, I think when the movie comes out, you could definitely reach out to him again. I don't see why he wouldn't do your podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if Zac Efron's going to respond to little old us reaching out to him with his millions of followers, but if he's listening, he's welcome to come on the show anytime.
Once in my next fan letter that I write to him, which is going to be I'm already late to write it, but so when I pop that guy in the mailbox later on today, I will make sure that I remember to put in a request. Say, hey, give Dr. Morf give him a ring, Zach. Z.
Put a good word in for us.
I call him Zeph. That's my.
I'm excited to see James Hetfield from Metallica in it too. I'm a big Metallica fan, so he's going to be playing the cop that arrested Bundy.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that should be pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
multi-talented guy.
Yeah.
With all of these things, Ted Bundy was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. He called himself the most cold-hearted son of a bitch you'll ever meet. Threatened that if people continue to watch porn, there'll be more Ted Bundys out there. So he even referred to himself as a thing.
Loser.
A loser. What can we learn anything from him?
I don't know that we can necessarily. I mean, I think keeping him in captivity, I don't know if that's the right word, captivity, but examining him, studying, letting people question him, might have been the best way. I mean, analyzing his brain would only get you so far. But then, he's a liar. Who knows if anything that he would tell people would be true? He said, I had a great upbringing. I had a great family, blah, 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 blah. But do we really know that? I mean, is there, there were some rumors that his mom was actually his sister. That's how it was passed off. She was actually his mom, but for a while she posed as his sister. And, there were rumors that she may have been impregnated by his grandfather. So who knows what kind of dynamics were going on in the background there. And then the things that motivated him, there were accounts where he was the victim of a molestation when he was younger. But I just don't know where we draw the line to say, this is real, this is not real. How much BS is he giving us? If he tells us about all these victims, are there some that he's leaving out? So I don't know to what extent keeping him alive and talking to him and learning more about him would have helped, because we just don't know what would be true and what wouldn't.
I agree. He was so full of shit, and everything he said was sort of self-serving in whatever he wanted the person or people to hear and believe about him at the moment. But I will say the only thing that of value that I think maybe could have came is, well, at least the pattern that he kind of helped with the Green River Killer is somewhat interesting, because he did nail that the Green River Killer went back to the crime scenes and revisited these bodies and perhaps moved them or something like that. But he also had a really kind of great idea on a way to get a photograph of the actual Green River Killer. In those conversations he had with the feds, he said if you set up some kind of horror movie film festival night, that this killer may very well appear and be in the crowd, and you can take pictures of all these people and you may have a picture of him. And I think that was really fascinating, and I think that is kind of a glimpse into the mind of a serial killer, because obviously they are attracted to murder and things like that. And it was Bundy's idea that serial killers would be attracted to horror movies, especially in a setting like that. So I don't know. Maybe there were more ideas like that he could have come up with, concocted. But other than that, he was full of shit and a waste of life.
I agree with you 100%.
He probably would have got killed in prison. If he wasn't executed, he would have been among the Jeffrey Dahmers, who prisoners don't really tolerate child killers, and he wouldn't have made it much longer.